My first question would be, industrial design now is very fashionable thing, very fashionable tendency in the Bay Area or elsewhere. It has not always been like that, but companies like Apple, Nest, FitBit has brought design, to the general public. Do you have any thought on that? Like, why is that it has changed in the, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years? And how did you participate in your jobs in this change? Youenn.
Yeah, it has changed. I mean, that's undeniable. What Apple has done, or Steve Jobs in particular has done for our industry, is good and bad. It's great because all of our clients are a lot more sensitive to it. They understand that it's a function that is strategic. It's not just necessity, or you have to paint it the right color, make it the right shape. But also the public has become a lot more aware. So that gives us the power to challenge the status quo and to convince clients that they need to go further. And we can always use the example of Steve Jobs, who would never take no as an answer. So we use that all the time to challenge our clients. But it's also making our life also a bit more difficult, because we do have to push ourselves on a daily basis, right? To look at new materials, new ways of manufacturing, and also I would say we'll talk about that later. But the recruiting of talents is becoming a bit more challenging also, because a lot of the talents arrive in the Bay Area and then will go and spread into a lot more outlets or companies, employers than in the past. So it's not only the big corporations and the constituencies. A lot of smaller companies, including startups, obviously, will have designers in their staff, even including in their executive staff. So it's clearly a change.
Do you want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think part of the reason why as well design is starting to be like more in focus is, I mean, there's several reasons, like Youenn was explaining as well, and it's something, this is my own personal thought, but like if you look at old objects, like or even if you go back to like 1800, like it was really artisanal, where people were taking the attention to make it by hands, and it was, you didn't have that much choice as well. So when you tend to buy something at the time, it was made to last long and to do one function. And now we have objects that like tend to be multifunction, and you have tons of choice. And not only that, but like manufacturing need to happen really quickly, it need to be cheap. So design is also becoming like an additional element that will kind of try to separate the numerous objects that you have the choice between. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So this is like one of the reasons as well. I think that design is starting to become like companies are more and more aware of it. It's like they don't really have the choice anymore to ignore us, like to ignore the design phase. Whereas in the past, people were more focused on maybe the utility than the
And do you think this like people in the general public are now actually know what design is? Because as you said, for a lot of people, design is like just to do something beautiful and maybe more the artistic part. So now the companies, they understand that mostly, but do you think it's already understood by the general public, and how could you change that?
If I want to answer, first I want to say that the word design has been changed drastically in the last 10 years. Like now you can be a hairdresser and you can call yourself a designer. So in a way it's more complicated to explain why you are a designer here, because you're going to say, no, I'm not a hairdresser. not like a software engineer. Some people call themselves product designer, which are not hardware designer. They're actually doing software. So it's almost more confusing to explain people today, even with their better knowledge with Apple. With so many people consider themselves designers, but the people actually design objects. We still have to fight on every day to make sure that people understand what we're truly doing. My parents, I'm not sure even still today, they understand truly what I'm doing. And that's like the truth. I think we'll be constantly battling because it's, I think I have a lot of pleasure doing it, and there are a lot of people who like to be designers because it's so exciting to be part of that territory, and so we don't have to protect them. I'm very happy to have everybody call themselves designer.
Okay. I want to add to that. I think it's a benefit. It's at IDEO everybody's a designer. There's 700 of us, and there's only 32 who are trained as industrial designers. So this is the design you see, but then interaction design is another one. Retail design, business design, which is a completely new discipline, which is looking at business plans with a creative mindset, and generating different prototypes of business plans. And it's a completely new way of doing design, but I respect it completely.
And overall, you can always, I think it's becoming more spread as well, because you can always apply, like Youenn company is doing, apply a design thinking behind pretty much anything. So I think it's like spreading because of this reason as well.
Last two questions, and then it's your turn. So think about some questions if you want. So we said there are a lot of Europeans. I've said Europeans, but a lot of French, but Europeans in a design team here in Silicon Valley. Do you have an explanation for that? More so than in software team or even product or the marketing team, of course. Why is that?
It definitely is education, the educational system and the culture. To give you an example, last year I hired 4 designers. One of them is American. Then we have a German, a Swede, and a French. So European countries are really well represented in those 4, and that's just the full-time interns actually. Are a great way for us to look into the future of our hires, and many of them come from Europe. There's a school in Sweden called UMEA that we hire pretty regularly from. Then ISD, where those guys come from, quite extensively too. We even call it the French design mafia.
It used to be a time period where literally every single company had at least one guy from
your
ISD.
school. Yeah, and that school is in Valenciennes. It's kind of stuck between the freeway and
a smoking factory.
There's something truly unique about it.
I think that maybe part of it as well is when you spend, and I don't want to offend anyone if there is anyone from Valenciennes, but if you spend 3
I'm
or
not very
even
far from there.
5 years of your life stuck between this freeway and this foundry, you kind of want to have a little bit of this. And part of the reason as well, joke aside, is I think in France design is not as well as recognized as it is here. People here have really good salary, compared. That's a financial aspect, but it's also more recognition in general, and I think probably a little bit more liberty.
I think there's a lot of respect for what we do here, and I think all the students, interns who come here, they quickly realize that, and there's comfort in that respect. You will do your best work when you have respect.
Yeah. So last question before your turn. What are the differences between the US and the European or French way of integrating design into their process in a company? Some of you have seen both. Are there differences? And if yes, I'm sure yes. Is it changing? Which way and how? Is there a better way, and how can you actually try to help the other side improve?
I mean, so I when I was in France, I did some work for the groupQ&A, like Roventhal, and particularly on vacuum cleaners and stuff like that. And I think it's a little bit more serious, which kind of like, I mean, to me, tend to restrain a little bit my thinking in general. Like in the US, people tend to be a little bit more excited about things. It's just cultural. A little bit less critical as well, I think. And like, in one way, it's like easier. I mean, it's easier. It's good to have like motivation, but sometimes you kind of feel like, is it real? Like a little bit, you know. Whereas like in France, of what I could remember, and that was like 10 years ago, people tend to be like really a little bit more negative.
There is a true, in France there is this thing that it's a critique, and critique is not a bad thing. Think, and people, they have almost like it's a destructive, constructive system in France where people design by destroying the idea, even their own idea. Most of the time it's their own ideas. And they say, I like it, but I think there is a problem for this. And my idea is never great, and I'm going to challenge my ideas. And this is true. One of the way French people make design is just by saying, I like this, but look, I'm gonna give it to you, but I think it could be better if I do this, and let me do it for 5 more weeks, and I'm gonna come back and it's gonna be better. And 5 weeks later, you come back and say, I think it's okay, I can do better. And it's like this, where in US, they have a business focus, and they know exactly, and then one moment, they're not gonna look at that, they're gonna just say, we wanna do it, it's still gonna be delivered on this time, and all the designers, they're gonna just work for this, and when the goal is done reach, we're gonna sell it. It's because we are making dollars.
I think you're onto something really interesting where my understanding of the culture of our industry in France is still anchored in a time where the engineer is the king, right? At any level of decision in any of the companies that make things, there's an engineer. And the engineer will trust his tribe. And the designer is, like I said earlier, is a necessity. You kind of have to have it. It's, but it's not considered as a strategic partner. It's the painter, the guy who will make it prettier, right? And it's slowly changing. In fact, I see it changing. Most of the conversations I have right now with French companies who come to like the typical inspirational Silicon Valley trip, they will stop at our office. That's actually how we met.
Oh, yeah.
Right, a while ago. And then they want to talk to me about design thinking. Design thinking. Every single time I talk about design thinking is with a French person. So it gives me hope that there's the mindset is really changing. It's clearly not in all the layers of our country or our industry, but it's there's definitely something changing. It's definitely changing at the larger corporations level. So we have many conversations. We've done projects with Renault, for example, with L'Oréal. There's all those administrations and large French corporations have had the click of understanding what design can bring from a strategical standpoint and business standpoint eventually. But also it comes from another level, which is the startups. They look at what's happening here and they replicate it, whether they're in Paris or in Valenciennes or in Brittany. There's a lot of things happening. Now there's still a lot of work from what I can see still.
Okay. I mean, I'm just going to add one last thing on why there is a lot of French people here as well. And I think it's kind of related to our culture where we are probably more exposed to, like I was saying earlier, like older things, like our buildings are old, like we have access to more arts in general. I think like anywhere, like you walk in the street, you're going to tend to see more things than power lines. I mean, this is just, but at the end, I think it does play a difference because, and also the education, but it's all kind of part of a big thing that maybe make us more critical about like aesthetics in general. And it's the same for other European countries. It's just the history. People don't have the chance here to have this history, but San Francisco does still kind of have this with, I mean, they are made of wood, but like older houses than most of the US where it's like from the 80s.
I would say also just add about you're talking about education and the difference that might be in the education system in Europe and here in the US, and it's more a society, almost family level, that there's a radical change where here you want your kid to go to Harvard and to be the next lawyer, where in France or in Europe there's permission. If one of your kid want to be an artist or a designer, it's okay, right? Here it's not quite okay, is it? and so there's a reason why there's many European designers here, because there's a huge need, but there's also really good education in Europe and there's not as many jobs. So, the logic is pretty obvious.
Thanks. So it's your turn to ask questions, but first, just I want to acknowledge Simon over there, who will talk right after that. He's the CEO of 7 Hugs. So it will be a nice showcase of a French company, startups, who is here as part of the IDEO program, acceleration program, for a few weeks. And we'll do a pitch, explain what he does and how he integrated design into his products. So I just wanted to actually acknowledge him, but first, your questions. So, yeah.
Well, I was very impressed with your presentation. Thank you very much. That's something very new to me, and well, I knew about the design, but it's interesting to hear you talking about it. I have 2 questions. One is, what is the status of the intellectual property on the design? Is it the designer who is the owner of the final product? Is it your client? Is it moving from the past? That's one question. The other one is about you. You were mentioning that you recruit a lot of designers, and I'd like to understand, how do you recruit a good designer? How do you assess a good designer? Well, you have probably, when somebody is coming with some experience, you have a portfolio, and you can judge the portfolio, but the portfolio is always very personal, and something you like or you don't like the design, and maybe the design is excellent, but you don't like it. And that's one thing. The second is when you have a new designer coming out of school, how do you assess his value? Okay, 2 questions.
Okay, I see. Well, the first one is around intellectual property.
Yeah.
I think it varies on a case by case, but in my experience, as a consultant, you sell a service and you give away the intellectual property. So that's part of the contract. Now it's based on the contract. So in the case of a larger corporation paying the check for the full amount, they own you give them the IP for it, unless there is a patent. So the IP for the visuals is usually part of the contract, and then the patent, if there's a mechanical or a truly innovative idea in patent, usually the designer is the inventor, and the owner can be a corporation or the agency or the corporation. Now, in the case of startups, for example, that could be debated, where there's a different payment format. It might not be a fee, it might be a royalty. So then that opens another larger discussion on IP.
Yeah, and I think when you have royalties, for example, the companies always have the possibility to buy the intellectual property later on, like fully from the company. But as a designer, hopefully you will always be listed as an inventor.
Inventor, but that's only for a technical patent.
Yeah, or like drawings,
right.
like industrial design.
You're right.
But design patent in general, like, and the problem that, I mean, you guys probably encounter that as well on a lot of products that I had the chance to work on that got copied, or someone really inspired themselves from. Like, it's really difficult somehow to define yourself with that, because it will really depend of the point of view of whoever's going to, you know, challenge the pattern and judge, like the judge and the jury. And so like sometimes design looks exactly the same, but someone's going to put a pattern on it and they're going to go away with it. But some other time the design are almost similar but not really, but they're going to, it really depends of the case, like case by case.
But you can patent the design. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's
in
famous
the automotive
cases of-
industry, we were talking about the
the iPhone and Samsung, right? Apple, Samsung.
the genuine parts
Mhm.
and the genuine design of parts, and of course there are a lot of parts in the aftermarket in the automotive industry which are directly copied, and the manufacturers were fighting against this kind of thing, saying that it's copied,
Counterfeit.
and they were more talking of copyright rather than patent.
But yeah, this was more about mechanism in general, our tendency to be easier to patent than design, like that aesthetic.
They are separate. So when you pattern, you have physical pattern, and you have more like mechanical pattern, and you have concept pattern. I want to show something that we didn't talk about here, but in the Bay Area, there is a lot of company actually, because they want pattern, and they know that creative can create certain pattern at very value, they will give a bonus every year to the number of pattern that every designer file. And this is an encouragement for designer to actually create new patterns and be a creative, because creative, like we just proved tonight, is make successful business. Apple proved it, many people prove that design can create successful business.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because they know it's so much valuable, and this is something that's very true to many people, they encourage designers like to create new things, and you are rewarded for it in the Bay Area when you create new patterns. That's a side way of looking at it, but there's many people who will give you extra point for that.
Okay.
So we're running out of time, so if you have more questions, you can ask afterwards with wine, but I'd like to invite Simon to come here. So he has a very difficult job because he's the last person between you and the wine. It's a very hard position to be in. But
5 minutes.